it gives you the breathing room, and it gives you the capacity to actually rethink how you do business and what your business model is going to be. My prediction is there's going to be some things that will be replaced, some things will be made redundant, but I think we'll continue to change and morph. And ultimately, this tech's being developed for us. So we'll use it to our advantage. You know, if you look back in history, we've just found new ways of using this technology and moving forward. Set the world to rights.
Set the world to rights. That's it.
What it is.
Hello and welcome to Tech for Finance, where we help finance professionals leverage technology to level up their lives. I'm your host, Adam Shilton, and once again, we are joined by Dan Lawrence at Bots for That for this week's This Week in Tech podcast. Now, don't forget to subscribe to Tech for Finance on your favorite platform, and don't forget to subscribe to Dan's podcast, Beanies in a Pod, as well. But good to have you back, Dan.
Thank you, Adam. Good welcome. Good morning to you. Hope you had a good weekend.
Yes, no, all good. And for anybody that's wondering why the video looks different on this episode, it's because we've switched back to Zoom again because of Dan's hardware issues.
Now, let's not set my hardware issues. Now, this is not fair. Now, we've tried this 3 weeks in a row, right? Squadcast, and it always is. In fact, I was using it during lockdown, and it was brilliant. And I used it on a Mac. And recently, when we started up again, the first week it didn't work, so we went to Zoom. The second time, it worked perfectly. And this morning I went in and it came up proudly. And it had one of those like emoji salute, explosion kind of celebration memes on it.
Yeah.
And we proudly now support OS devices. And it was probably followed immediately by another message saying your devices are not supported. So well done, Squadcast. Back to the drawing board on that one.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well, all good. Well, we have, because we use the free version of Zoom because I'm tight 40 minutes. So if there's any awkward cutting when we restart the meeting,
It's all right.
I apologize.
No, we'll make it work.
But
I had a relatively tech-free weekend actually as well.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it was my wife's birthday. So we were off down in the countryside, down at the seaside and away from all tech, which is quite nice actually. Nice break.
Yeah, no, it's nice to get away and have a bit of a detox. I think people know I used to be an avid listener to the Tim Ferriss podcast.
Okay, yeah.
You think about podcasts, you think about Tim Ferriss, right? And he always, I think he used to do it on a Saturday, where the rule was absolutely no devices of any sort. But I'd say difficult to put into practice now, right?
Well, from judging from your first agenda item, it's about to become even harder, potentially.
Yeah,
nice little segue for you there.
Yeah, well, we talked about your Apple hardware having issues with compatibility. But no, the first topic of conversation is the Apple Vision Pro, which is a bit of hardware. It's one of those headsets similar. It looks a bit like those Oculus, doesn't it, Dan? You know, that used to use that the kids still use for the gaming. I'm sure adults use it as well. I don't fall into that category, but
no.
It looks like a set of goggles. It's in the same category as the Microsoft HoloLens when that first came out, I believe. HoloLens, though, and I'm sure it's improved, it was incredibly bulky when it first came out. It was less a visor than a helmet, I think. So it was absolutely massive. But I think Apple, in true Apple style, have done their thing of making it smaller and, I don't know, prettier or whatever. But I saw a picture of it, and it kind of looked like one of those modern, you know, when you had the like steampunk type stuff. It almost looked like a white steampunk set of goggles on the front of your face. But the reason I saw it is because Microsoft just announced their compatibility of the Office applications within the Apple Vision Pro. So which
means it'll be another 6-7 years before it actually works. Sorry, it's true. Facts.
The name of the post was something like "Pivot tables will never be the same again," or something like that. But I'm looking at this.
Well, I hope not. I really do.
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that the whole premise of it is it's like an augmented reality setup, isn't it? So. And again, people will keep me true on this, but I believe it doesn't block out your surroundings. It
doesn't.
Visuals, within your surroundings.
Yeah, I've been following it for a while.
Okay.
I've seen a few. I won't mention their names, but the few major tech influencers on YouTube. There's a few really big ones, and there's one in particular. We were actually watching it last night with my son, and he brought it up because he said this is the best one I've seen yet, and it was a guy who was literally went out for the day around a major city,
Yeah.
and he wore the whole thing for the whole day on the train, walking around, sitting around in the city, and they showed the views, and it literally was he was just sitting there with. It was actually it's effectively seeing the real world, but through a lens with something else super injected on the front of it, so you can see everything else around you in the same way that you normally would, but you've then got virtual reality beamed on top of it or interfaced into it, so you can see your app, your typical app screen in front of you. You can dial things up, you can have Netflix on the side, you can still see people around you. It looked quite good, but I'm still not quite sure. I remember when I must have been about 9 or 10, maybe a little bit less, and we went down to our local tech store because even then I was into the tech, and this guy said, "You'll never see this. This is the next big thing. Everyone's going to be wearing these," and it was a sun visor, plastic sun visor, like the old plastic ones you used to get, with a radio around the front of the top, and an aerial that came up, and like a mug. I bought one, and you know what? The only person I ever saw wearing one was not even me. I took it out once. I thought, "Oh dear, what have I done?"
Oh,
And I'm not sure that this isn't one of those things. I just don't. I mean, I think the concept is interesting. I just can't see myself wearing one. It's not until it gets like to the extent where you've got something like this, proper like lenses, like glasses on, maybe that'll work. But I don't know. I'm not sure I'd still want it.
I don't think it's going to be for us, and I use us in the broader sense of
I mean, old people.
Yeah, the people that are used to the mice and the keyboards, and obviously there'll be outliers, people that are hell bent on making sure that they do evolve. But I think it's going to be more relevant for my kids because they spend their time stuck in iPads as it is anyway. But take me as a personal use case, right? I am clumsy. Yeah, that's my default. I'm not particularly coordinated. The music stuff's fine, yeah, but I don't have to move myself in space when I'm playing an instrument. Either I'm sat on a piano stool or I'm sat on a chair, right?
Yeah.
But the whole concept of having something on me that is blotting out parts of my vision, if I'm in so the office here, right, could be a good setting because I've got lots of white walls. So in theory, I could project all over my office from my chair, which is fine. Okay. And that could sort of solve the problem that some people have in terms of multiple monitors. Some people have these sort of ginormous, almost like stock trader setups, right, where they've got everything on different screens. But therein lies another problem because I can't multitask. So I deliberately have one screen so that I can just have one screen of work at a time. And I'm still a sod, so I still do the the Windows tab to flick between screens and all that sort of stuff. I'm always trying to find ways to distract myself, so I need to get back into the app blocking and that sort of stuff. But for me, it would definitely be information overwhelm, and I've seen videos of like kids sitting on the tube with these visors in front of them, and I'm just. It's that integration piece that I think you're pointing to there. It's the how does it evolve to the point where it does become part of our day to day. And I think for youngsters who don't want to speak to each other anyway, it might not be an issue. But for me, I'd struggle.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, multitasking is actually a myth anyway. It's been proven we can't actually do more than one task at once anyway.
Yeah.
So therein lies a significant danger. But I mean, I think the thing it's really potentially most useful for is people who aren't able, to get up, get around, get to desks, get to screens. I think for that, I think we talked about the microchip in the in the back of the brain last time, right? And I think both of those have probably potentially really beneficial applications for those kind of people. It's just not for me. I just can't see myself not doing that like you. But it does open up a lot of interesting possibilities. I'm not sure a lot of them are good though. That's the thing. But we'll see. We could just be old farts here.
Yeah, no, I'm up for it, so I remember a few years ago they started talking about like wearable tech, like the phones that would wrap around actually wrap around your wrist. And they've started doing it already, haven't they, with the Samsung foldy things?
Yeah.
The fluid screens and that sort of stuff. But we'll have to see. I mean, I see some definite use cases for the whole sort of augmented reality in terms of when you need more than 2D. And that was always the HoloLens thing, right? All of
Yeah.
the marketing for that revolved around like architectural stuff, where you needed like a 3D model virtually that was a little bit difficult to visualize on the screen, but it would have been easier if you could visualize it on a table, right? So we'll have to see.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest, I think, the most significant downside is if you've seen someone wearing one of these things and they're sitting in an almost empty room, waving their arms around, they look like complete. Can I say dicks?
You know what you like, mate. Yeah, and I'll put and this is a post by Linus, and I'm not going to try and pronounce his second name, but he's like big in finance, fintech, that sort of stuff. But his video, and you probably won't be able to hear the audio now. I'm just looking at this kid on the tube. He's literally on the tube.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Pretending to type.
He's just doing this. Yeah,
it might be
looks
the
like a
same
mime
guy,
artist.
actually, that you were talking about. That
it's a different one.
It is a different one.
Yeah, it's a different one. But yeah, he looks like a mime artist.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Put some white gloves on him, and he's like this.
Yeah.
Is there a wall? There's my hat. Yeah, he looks like a complete dick.
And you, I mean, I copy your quote that we did on our very, like, literally the first Tech for Finance podcast, where you were my very first guest. And you said there's stuff that bots do well that humans don't, and then there's stuff that humans do well that bots don't. And for me, being human is that social aspect. And I appreciate some people are introverted, right? And fine, if you want to show yourself in a room, that's okay. But I think in social settings, especially as AI does start doing more stuff, we need to focus on being humans and not detaching ourselves from reality. But I guess it's no different to when you sit on the tube anyway, and everybody's got their heads down and they're looking at the phone screens, right? So, is it going to be any different looking at a phone compared to looking at a headset?
Well, yeah. So maybe we're just continuing on down the rabbit hole currently, rather than turning around and coming up for air.
Yeah.
More of the same, unfortunately.
So, yeah. Okay, fine. But everybody check it out, because I think you definitely need to have a look at it. In terms of the Office suite and whatever compatibility means. I mean, I did a sort of bit of a flippant comment on the post, which was something like, I'd like to see how you can navigate to cell C937 with your eyes. Do you know what I mean? And I know it's not going to mean that, but it's right. It cells on a screen aren't going to be much different if it's in augmented reality compared to.
No, but there's a different answer to that.
Go on.
You go on the screen, you say, "Run bot," and you get on with your life.
Yeah, or you talk to it. You say, "Navigate to see 937." Yeah. Okay. Fine. So, yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, let's move on. But before I move on to my second topic, which is probably the more ominous, based on a story I heard last week, I'm going to flip to topic 3, which is an app. I think it's a phone app called Arc Search, ARC Search. Is this the future of web browsing? ? So, for people who have been keeping up to date with myself and some of the other sort of AI peeps online, there is already a service called Perplexity, which is pretty cool. And you just go to, I think it's perplexity. Let me just see whether I can find the link with an X. Let's see whether it Perplexity. Yeah, so it is perplexity.ai, perplexity.ai, and that is an AI search. Yeah. And it actually works pretty well. So instead of you Googling and having to, trawl through lots of different search results that maybe, push with loads of ads and loads of irrelevant information or lots of marketing bump, you can just ask Perplexity about a topic and it will bring back some pretty concise results based on your search term. And what's nice as well is you can change the search type. So you could say, I want to search Reddit or academic articles or fill in the gap. Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's still sort of producing, I guess, a text list and a bit of descriptive narrative around that. What Arc Search apparently is doing, and I've not downloaded it yet, but I will just have a go, is it almost creates your own website, if that's the best way to think about it. So you give it a search term and it will build you an interface that is everything to do with that search term. And obviously the real advantage of this, as well as having, a reduced need to search through a load of search terms, is that it's easier to get to the result that you want quicker, right? But the reason that I wanted to mention this is everybody sort of, started saying, oh, Google search is dead, and, pay-per-click advertising is dead, and all of this sort of stuff. I will be honest and say that the majority of my Googling in inverted commas now is just asking either ChatGPT or Copilot to find me information, and it comes back with 3 links or whatever, and it saves me having to trawl through these links because I think we discussed on one of the episodes, people are always looking for shortcuts and inherently lazy, which is why I do that, just because I want faster results, right? But I'm keen to get your perspective on some of these AI-enabled search bots. Is that the way things are going? Do we think that there will be less reliance on traditional type search? I don't know whether you've experimented with any of these tools.
Not this one. I guess it's another version or play on personalized search and sort of Web 3.0, isn't it? Something sort of somewhere between the two. But it's just the first time I've seen it. Looking at it today, it seems still in the, I guess, R&D stages. So if it's not going to have any of the clutter, it's not going to have any of the ads and pop-ups and all the junk that we all hate. I wonder what model it's going to be commercially. Because ultimately 80% of revenues from most of this kind of websites all comes from, advertising, right?
Yeah.
At least, if not more.
If you paid for the app, and that's where Perplexity is going. You can get the pro version of Perplexity.
Yeah,
Muddling up the
yeah.
words today.
When I'm just trying to, I'm struggling to see if it's anything more than a personalized app search tool. But I guess everything these days is using so-called AI theory, right? It's like the old turbo badge, right?
Yeah,
everyone just slaps something on it now.
Yeah.
But all search now, all of the search in the world is on Microsoft or Google and Apple, so they're all effectively using AI already. Just a question of what you get served in return for you giving up your data rights, right? It is, isn't it?
Okay, so let's flip the question then. So you said, what's the commercial model going to be? So traditional web, a lot of businesses are built on traditional web search, right? So I'll go back to my sales and marketing experience that says there's only a few ways to capture an audience. Either you do the cold outreach piece, cold email, cold calls, warm outreach for the people that already know you exist, content, i.e. producing content to get as many eyeballs on your links as possible, and then paid. Yeah. And especially for younger businesses that don't have a ton of branding, they don't have the recognition, they don't have the size of team or, size of funding to compete with the bigger players, a lot will invest in PPC to make up for the fact that they don't have a lot of organic reach. Yeah. So if the world shifts to the point where all of the search is AI enabled, how are you going to get eyeballs on your content from leveraging PPC? Because if these tools are saying it's ad free,
yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so are we into?
Yeah, and you're basically up against the behemoths, the giants of the world who have effectively invented search with a paid for product. Yeah, and I'm not sure. But I'm not sure what value it really gives. It's mobile anyway, only, right? So it's not on desktop. I don't really do a lot of searching when I'm on the mobile, to be honest with you.
Your desktop.
Yeah, I generally don't do a lot of search from the mobile. And if you do, you just ask Siri. You get the same because you get the same response, right? It's
But
just different, really.
but I suppose that there might be something quite nice for, take the example of finance, right? You know, if we're doing a benchmarking exercise, or
Mhm.
if we're trying to keep up to date with, you know, compliance in whatever form it takes now,
Mm.
have a nice bit of personalized. It's almost like research on your behalf, I guess, isn't it? You know, if it's scouring and putting everything on one page. For me, it's still just a time saving thing, right?
Possibly, possibly. I'll have to try it, actually. I'll have to give it a go.
Mm.
I will try it out. I
Feedback
will
next
try it
week.
out and report back to you what I think.
Yeah, yeah. But it's
Yeah.
like I get, you know, connections all the time from people that are building these various apps. So I've had a couple that have connected and said, you know, you know, I'm building a personalized AI search or a personalized research assistant, and all of that sort of stuff.
Mm.
And it comes back to what I've said for a while now, which is we're getting to a point where, you know, do we source a person or do we source an AI? And I've been reading up on some of the predictions for stuff like GPT-5,
Yeah.
where we're getting to that next level of it not just being an AI assistant, but it's more of an AI agent where it actually does stuff. And people have been doing this. I saw a post the other day of somebody who'd used, you know, the ChatGPT GPTs, and they'd connected it using an action to the point where it would self-guide. So
Mm.
they'd almost made a GPT that was an autonomous agent, right?
Mm.
So that's my prediction, right? Instead of having to say, help me with this, we're getting more into the territory of go and do this, and then it will work it out for itself. And I guess this is where we're getting with some of these apps, some of these searches. Is essentially what we're saying is you've got a narrow AI use case for research purposes. So you don't need to hire a person to do the research, for example. So this leads to the last topic of conversation, which we talk about quite a lot, which is the concept of job replacement, and I guess the different levels. Because at the moment, I mean, use my term AI sourcing. If I think of a niche use case, I think in terms of meeting notes, for example. Yeah, so have like a Teams Premium or an Otter or whatever it has, acting as the person who's sitting in on the meetings and doing the minutes and then doing the summary for you. You know, again, we're replacing the need to have an assistant in the room that's manually taking the notes for us, right? So that's sort of I guess, an easy to understand example. We've got Arc Search being like a personalized AI search to save you having to, I mean, depends how advanced it is, but saves you having to employ a research assistant or something like that. But the use case I heard last week, again, this is a bit sales related, is there are now some larger organizations that are building AI SDRs. And for people that aren't familiar with the term, that's a sales development representative. So lead gen, right? And the feedback, and the company that's using them shall remain nameless. They are claiming that they can produce a sort of an autonomous SDR that will produce 80% of the results that a human will do for 50% of the cost. Now, some people in finance might be thinking, "Oh, great! You know, if I can save 50% on salaries, that might be amazing, right?"
Well.
But for me, I'm still struggling to see it
Mm.
because, you know, similar to when people started using AI to do cold emails, right? A couple
Mhm.
people got fools, but then within a few weeks, people started seeing the clues and became wise to it. It's the same with AI generated comments on LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
is there a window of opportunity that's short term whereby companies can do this sort of thing without people knowing, or is it going to be a case where it might work for a week and then people become wise to it? Because for those sorts of scenarios, maybe it's just me, but I can't remove the person from that situation. You know, the wanting to build rapport, you know, the wanting to ask a specific question that isn't just a pre-programmed talk track. Or is that just me misunderstanding some of the capability of what we have in some of these new AIs? Can they actually successfully emulate a human being to the point where a job does get replaced? And I guess
Well,
I just don't know enough, I guess.
well, I mean, think about what an SDR does, though. I
Mm,
mean, what they do is so type scripted
mm,
and robotic that it's easily replaceable. I mean, it's not that effective. It's not that challenging. Most of us kind of just switch off. If everyone picks up the code, I block every single number I don't get anyway. No, anyway. But how
including
effective is
mine.
it really?
I was that adamant again. Block.
Wasn't it? Yeah. But so many jobs that are incredibly mundane, scripted. I mean, I'm talking probably 7 years ago when we first got into automation. We were at a convention and someone actually played they played a video of someone interacting with a salesperson. And at the end of it, they asked the question to the audience: so, did you think that salesperson was a person or a robot? And everyone thought it was a robot. 90% of the audience guessed it was a robot, and it was a person. And that's the last nearly a decade ago. So those roles have been so heavily type scripted and roboticized anyway that it's difficult to tell the difference. Because they just have to literally follow the script all the way through. That's just what they do. There's not a great deal of rapport building unless it's built in the script. So I think those things are easily, and we've been automating those with much less hyped technology for at least a decade. It's just coming to the fore now with it's just a new version or new flavor of it. It's the same tool. It's just doing the same thing. It's just doing it in a different way, in a slightly more creative way, maybe with a bit more small talk and sort of personality built into it, but it's effectively the same thing. And I think it, like you said, there's always limited use on it. I think it's getting better. I think the application could be broader, whereas before you'd sort of get stuck at a certain point. Whereas now with AI, it can learn, and it can learn off of interactions, and it can build in more and more of that personalization. So I think it'll get better. I think there's always going to be a limited range, because there's a limited range in the process itself to begin with. It always has a limited shelf life. So I think the more that it can adapt, the better. But I think it's always an augmentation tool anyway, because you never want to just rely on just one thing, because we become fairly immune to these things quite quickly. So I think it's always an enabling, and it's always an augmenting kind of approach you take with it, and you keep finding and testing new ways. And I think that's a great way to actually test out things that might work, because you can build things very quickly and actually maybe discover approaches that are more successful, and then you can throw people on it to accelerate it and build on it and do more, because the AI can learn not just from what the AI sees and does, but it can learn from what the people see and do as well. And because it can track all data, it can see what ends to be more successful in one case or another, and they'll pick up on patterns. So I think it can be used for that purpose, definitely. And whether that's sales or whether it's customer support as well, any interactions, I think really from a business, I think it's always a good thing to have. I think it's obviously getting much more affordable now as well, which is probably the best thing about it, because it's no longer the domain of only the very large enterprises. SMEs can now get their hands on the same tech and get the same sort of results. But I think when you say that it gets the same results for half the price, but generally speaking, a lot of those results generally are quite low anyway, right? So it's a numbers game, because you make 1,000 calls, you get 10 responses. So whether it's bang for the buck, I don't know, but hopefully you can take those people and actually generate more value in the business from either not having them there or putting them onto things that we're better at.
So the challenge that I will give to this is, you have to be a pretty rubbish SDR to be replaced by an AI right now. Yeah. And people might disagree with me on that. But I'll use an example. So I mean, if you've got a commodity product where it is a volume play, and it is literally just repeat, deliver the script, send this email, do whatever, because I'm sure the AI can do a phone call, it can probably send an email, it can probably do whatever, right? I'm not disagreeing with that. But then when you take more complex type solutions, so my background, as people know, is finance software and ERP systems, it's never just a single talk track, because it is a fundamental change to the people that run their business. And if people do engage in those sorts of conversations, then they want to trust that the people that are speaking to them know their stuff, for example. So a more seasoned SDR or BDM or whatever the silly acronym is will always take into account research. So what position is that individual in right now? Are they part of a growing company? Are they likely to be struggling with having to hire in a difficult market, for example? Will that be a reason to invest in tech over people, for example? Or, are they new to the role? Are they going to be embarking on these sorts of projects. So, a seasoned SDR will use that contextual research and use that as a door opener and his ability to obviously mold the conversation to the situation that individual finds themselves in. And I can't see right now that an AI is going to be able to get under the skin and do all of that research to be able to then deliver a tailored message in an effort to make sure that they are having the right conversation instead of a script. But I guess it varies industry to industry, right?
Yeah, yeah, possibly. I think I think coming back to the augmentation though, I think it's one of those things where you still want those really experienced and expert BDMs and SDRs, ones who can really open doors and build relationships.
Mm.
What you can use the eyes for is you may play a different numbers game.
Mm.
So rather than having lots of people sitting there going through the scripts and trying to filter through thousands or tens of thousands, you can use the AI to filter it quicker, faster, cheaper, with probably more context and more granularity for more experienced people to take that over and then close things. I think that's probably where it probably settles. You use the tech to filter through to get through numbers, with much greater speed and accuracy, but with providing more context, and then you're handing it over to someone, because people probably don't really want to be closed by an AI. They probably want to have a conversation with a person when they come closing time. You want to do that.
So an example, so moving this into more of a finance discussion rather than a sales discussion. I've talked previously about some of the things that a company called Glean are doing. I think I've given them a shout out before. I'm hoping to have Howard on the podcast, to be fair. He's the founder of the business. Anyway, they've got an AI accounts payable platform. Right. So it does all the standard stuff that you'd expect from an AP platform, but they put a lot of weight on their ability to benchmark similar spend. Yeah. So if you are spending X with this supplier, we know that on average other companies spend Y with this supplier. So they can then give indications as to whether they might be overspending or not. So I guess the crossover here is you are equipping, when we talk about augmentation, your either finance or procurement team with a better ability to negotiate if they know something. On the flip side, the people that are actually supplying might get annoyed because they don't want their pricing to be benchmarked. You see what I mean? Yeah. But that is more in line with the augmentation piece that you mentioned there. What we've not got is an automated procurement specialist that phones up suppliers and runs through a script in an effort to negotiate better rates. Maybe that's an idea. Maybe I should build that.
Well, on the flip side, the seller can also use the same tech to pitch and negotiate from their perspective too. And all you end up with is two AIs arguing with one another effectively. Yeah, ultimately it comes down to two people again to say, right, okay, well, we've both laid all the cards on the table. This is where we're going to settle up, right? I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. Because ultimately, what you're going to do, just basically connect up the two AIs and say, well, we'll leave them to get on with it. Let's go and have a cup of coffee, and we'll see what they decide between them.
Maybe, and is it, and this, I think our world is going to become increasingly more meta. I think people are gonna end up two steps removed from the stuff that's actually going on. I mean, we joked about it when we originally started talking about using AI to generate emails for you. Oh, I'll just hook up my AI with your AI, and they can have a bit of a chat about it. Maybe not for emailing. I think I see a definite use case when it comes to calendar scheduling. I'll just hook you up with my AI assistant, and then they can talk about moving diaries around to facilitate. I think that's a better.
We already, and you don't even need AI for that. I mean, we've already built one of those years ago.
Right.
Same sort of thing.
There we go.
Just small plug there, but that's why not, right? Because if you're away on holiday and you get 5 requests come in and it's already taken, well, what do? You have to wait for them to come back. But absolutely, it should be able to find the next available slot that put it in. So that should work. But
so I mean, we could talk about it forever in a day, and I suppose. And I've seen quite a lot of this recently. So I'm a Gartner peer community ambassador, which is cool. And it's a great community. And again, I'll plug Gartner because there's a lot of really good discussions going on in that community. So it's like Gartner's version of LinkedIn for, I mean, I think you've got to pay obviously is the way for some of the more interesting data and some of the reports that you get through the community. But I think the base level where you can sort of connect and get insight from the community is free. But there was a lot of talk at the end of last year around Gen AI use cases, but there were also a lot of questions for people that were scared of the consequences of generative AI. And my comments to those posts were always, look, think in terms of augmentation rather than replacement, right?
Yeah.
And I think, coming back to the point that I mentioned earlier, there will always be room for smart people with specialisms, with expertise, and so on and so forth. But I think there are going to be more opportunities to source to an AI, because if you think about it, right, and I've done this before, take a platform like Upwork. Yeah. I don't know whether you've used Upwork before, but Upwork is the ability to find contractors, virtual assistants, all of that sort of stuff. So actual people, the advantage you get is they might be in a different region whereby, salaries are lower, or money goes further. So instead of paying, somebody in your region 50 quid an hour or 100 quid an hour, you pay somebody $5 an hour, because they're either based in India, the Philippines, or whatever, just by way of that, the cost of living over there being greatly lower, right?
Yeah.
But what you find, it's so tricky finding quality talent in a pool of so many people. So you've got to have quite a good filter when it comes to selecting the sorts of contractors that you want to use. And of course, they are reviewed, so obviously you go with the ones that have a better track record, right? But you've still got to explain in quite a level of detail what you want them to do so that you don't pay for poor quality work, or you don't pay for the wrong output, right? And Dan, I'm going to have to stop this, and we're going to have to...
Just that we're at 60 seconds to go.
All right, so we'll do that now. All right. Right. Despite the Zoom issues, we're back. It's quite funny, though. So I clicked meet now straight after we'd ended the last one, and it said, oh, you can't start another meeting for 9 minutes until you pay. So I just scheduled a meeting and then just joined it straight away. So anyway, yeah. So what are we talking about? Yeah. So Upwork sourcing. You need to be very careful that you're not just providing loose instructions and then expecting, really high quality work. And I think that will play forwards in the form of outsourcing, then AI sourcing. And we're already seeing this with the GPT store where people are building stuff for specific purposes, right? But I think it will just become next level where these AIs can do more and more advanced stuff that a basic human resource could do. So whether that's tax compliance, I've got an AI that knows about tax compliance. It knows what your regions are. It knows what all of the various tax codes per item type are. So it will go do its thing, run away, and all of that sort of stuff. So that's my prediction anyway. As to how long it takes to get to that point, I don't know, but...
Yeah, I know. And I'm, to be honest with you, since I got into what we do with robotics, it's always been a case of the thing that people have always talked about is job losses. It's an inevitable part of technology. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, some jobs will be, some things will be replaced, or they'll become redundant. I think whether they become redundant through not being required, or be redundant because don't need to be done by a person anymore. That's probably a good thing in a lot of cases. And I think if you think about parallels, we haven't, our need to travel hasn't gone away in 400 years. We just find new ways of doing it. But the need to travel hasn't disappeared. And I think the need to do things, to build businesses, to provide services, to build products, those things aren't going to go away. We'll just have new tools and better tools to do things in a different way. But those things will always be there, and we'll always need people for certain things, because ultimately we're not selling to machines, we're selling to people. It's people that buy things. And so there'll be ways and things that we'll do differently, certainly. I think people who know how to use the tech will probably have a brighter future than those who turn their back on it. I think that's probably true. I'm seeing that in various industries. The old guard who are at the very end of their careers are not interested in exploring the tech. the new ones who are coming through are only interested in using the tech and want to use it for as much as possible. And I think that opens up new doors, new avenues. When you've got more time to do more things, suddenly you can do a lot more with that time. What people tend to not do is just say, "Oh, we don't need bots now. We don't need people anymore because we've got AI and bots, and we just get rid of them." What they do is they'll use those people for more things. And I'm seeing that in the accounting industry, for example, rather than just so compliance is almost now an automated thing. So audit is becoming an automated thing. So you don't need necessarily as people for that, not as, or you need people, but not as many. So you can use those people to get more results out of those activities. But you can also say, well, let's turn our advisory services, for example, into not just advising. Let's become true business partners. Let's embed ourselves in the business. Let's become virtual CFOs. Let's also then do advisory on technology, because we've found out how to build and use technology better. Let's advise our customers, our businesses, our clients how to do it better too. And let's build on other advisory services into that, and let's start to diversify and broaden our business offerings. So there's an awful lot more that you can do when you've got things like that at your disposal. It gives you the breathing room, and it gives you the capacity to actually rethink how you do business and what your business model is going to be. And I think that's really my prediction is there's going to be some things that will be replaced, some things will be made redundant, but I think we'll continue to change and morph. And ultimately, this tech's being
developed
for us. So we'll use it to our advantage. Unscrupulous people will use it to theirs as well, unfortunately. So we'll always have to find new ways of counteracting that. And I think that's probably where it's going, because that's really where it's gone. If you look back in history, we've just found new ways of using this technology and moving forward.
So, yeah, I think my hope is that the technology enables the smaller businesses to grow quicker and provide value quicker. There's then a question over whether the more bloated traditional style businesses will then be able to keep up. But I guess that's not changed, since the Industrial Revolution, right? Generally the companies that use the tech and are able to build quicker, but obviously provide value at a greater level are the ones that ultimately win, right? So my hope is that smaller businesses are able to use the technology to stay lean as they grow, and provide real value without having to get swept up with, having to build companies of hundreds of thousands of people, right?
Yeah, I hope so, because ultimately that absolute sort of power position usually leads to an abuse of absolute power, doesn't it? So, and we see it everywhere. And you look at our utilities and stuff that we pay for, all the sort of offshoring and outsourcing and all the things that should result in cost savings. None of those get passed on to us as the consumer. They just get passed on to the shareholders. So yeah, maybe the future, is benefit for us as consumers, and doesn't just favor the less than 1% of our population or people in different countries altogether. Maybe it does return some of the balance of power, and that can only be a good thing.
So if we were to play that forward and say, right, well, it's easier for people to form businesses and build businesses, there's going to be more businesses, right? And I struggle with decision fatigue at the best of times, right? And we're now at a point where instead of having two options when I decide to work with someone or choose on a piece of tech, I've got 200 options. So I don't know how we get past that piece. Maybe
you've got something called Arc Search that's going to advise us, right? Coming back to the beginning. And we'll be sitting there with our Apple Vision Pros doing this. Which one should we use? Arc Search. Okay, brilliant. We'll use that one.
But I mean, so maybe the future is more niche. I don't know. You only want to use this because these guys work with these businesses and these sizes and shapes, right? Well, maybe there'll be more referral business as a result. We won't be as reliant on the old, PPC and that sort of stuff. I don't know whether you agree with this either, but I've also seen an increase in the volume of fractional services as well. I guess in the UK, definitely. That's just part-time or interim, right?
Yeah, fractional CFOs, HRs, HROs, CRO. Yeah, it's brilliant. And in fact, it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
Because because the way that I see that is you end up with like more of a modular business, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost as if you're kind of the brain that just connects up all of these various different skills. You know, is it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Partly. I think there's always a core. I think what you do, because normally what you do when you start up, you sort of build a core
Mm,
team of experts in all the different areas that you need. And as you grow, that core team grows a little bit broader, and then you start filling the lines of hierarchy underneath it to deliver. But ultimately, that lines of hierarchy can be approached differently.
mm,
So you may have a smaller hierarchy, a flatter organization with more tech doing more of the grunt work, and so it's, fractional part-time folks filling in certain roles, or I think there's this it definitely opens up the possibility for different structured organizations in futures, different ways to grow, different ways to grow a business from the ground up as well, and so it makes growing and accelerating and scale differently. It will affect investment,
mhm.
so there's a lot of things that could flip and change with what we're seeing now in the future, but only time will tell. But having going through it, I could definitely see how we've done things differently now than someone would have done 20 years ago and 20 years before that.
Mm.
So it's an interesting way that things are proceeding. Definitely, it's definitely opening up opportunities that weren't there.
So how do we advise maybe younger people in finance that don't have enough experience to become fractional yet? You know,
Mhm.
they might be good with tech, right? But
I think
the
it's always the
yeah,
same though, isn't it? I mean, even when you're not fractional, when you're in your first year, you still don't really know enough to be to be truly valuable
mm,
in lots of fields.
mm,
I think actually, in some respects, and I learned this as well when I became a consultant early in my career. I probably learned more on the consulting field than I did sitting in a job for 10 years,
mm, mm,
because I saw so many more things. I was around the table for so many more discussions
mm,
than I would ever have got exposure to. So I think actually going fractional early can be a huge advantage. You just have to accept that you're not going to be, where you'd like to be. But that's probably a curse of the young right now anyway. They all sort of want to move faster than they can, you know, possibly go. Everyone wants to, and I think if you use the tools to do research, to learn, to use tools to get jobs done, things get done faster, not even doing them yourself. I think there's so much opportunity now being fractional to do so much, to accelerate your learning by using this tech,
mm.
and work with 5, 6 different businesses at a time. You can learn so many different industries, different roles. I think the opportunity is so much bigger than even when I did it when I turned consulting.
Mm. I think when you are more junior, if that's the correct word, yeah, you might not have more expertise, but you might have more time.
Yeah, yeah,
And the recommendation is invest that time in learning. Just
definitely,
make sure that you
definitely.
actually put it into practice because, as Alex
Mm.
Hormozy always says, if you read something or watch something or take a training course, but you don't change your behavior as a result of it, you've learned nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got to fill your buckets in order. You start with your knowledge and skills, and then you use those skills to gain experience, and that's 80% of it.
Yeah, yeah. And
And I
focus on
think,
focus on meta skills again. Another Alex Hormozyism is
hmm
learning how to learn.
hmm yeah,
If you're maybe unsure about what direction you're going, do I want to be a business partner? Do I want to be a CFO? Do I want to go fractional or whatever? The best thing that you can possibly do is learn how to quickly absorb as much information
hmm
to the point where
and
you've got a base level of understanding in most things.
yeah, and also scarily, know the tech, yes, know how to use it and get the best out of it, but become the best person that you can be.
Mm,
Because ultimately, it's people that buy your services.
mm,
It's people that will see value in you,
mm,
not AI.
mm,
Businesses are still made up of people. So become the best people person you can be.
mm,
Interaction, communication, influence, support, empathetic, advance the softer skills as
mm,
well as the technical skills. Don't preference one over the other. Balance them out, and gain as much experience as you can in as many things as possible.
mm,
And I think you'll accelerate. I think people's growing and growth rate will far exceed what we would have been able to do, because we had to do a lot of grunt work,
mm,
just to get to a point where, and it would take us 5 times longer, 10 times longer to
mm,
get to the same point. They don't actually have to go through all of that now. They can say, AI, do this for me, but tell me how you did it.
mm,
And
mm,
something that would have taken a year to do could take, a day.
mm.
to do now. So there's so many advantages open to them now,
Mm.
which is, and it's also open to us old folks too. You know, you can always you can actually teach an old dog new tricks.
Mm.
So you know, we should take advantage of it while we're still here too, and we can extend our own careers as a result of that, just by doing things differently. We don't have to work as hard, just need to work smarter. That's not a bad thing.
I think that's probably a good point to finish on those very wise words, Dan. No, very good. Have you got anything that has been on your mind this week that you wanted to cover?
No, to be honest with you, I just look forward to our chats because I just like to see what you always bring to the table, and I always like just to open my mind and gets me thinking. So I love to start the week with these kind of calls.
Does it though? Because
yeah, it does. It does.
I always feel like, you know, yeah, I know this. Like, yeah, I know exactly. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like when you answer the questions, it's almost like, no, I know this. I got this sorted. So it's good that it's offering a fresh perspective. I'd hate to think that we were just going over old ground the whole time.
No, always. I'm honest, I don't really do a lot of planning and prep for things. Generally speaking, I just like to just whatever's in there and whatever's in there comes out. You know.
There we go.
So it's good to just be challenged. Yeah, I think that's always a good thing. It always allow yourself to be challenged.
Yeah,
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, very good.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah.
All right, then, mate.
Going.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time.
My pleasure.
And we shall catch up soon. All right, mate.
Will do. All right, have a good one.
Cheers. Bye.